And 2020 has hit us all hard over and over and over, some harder than others. But this, to give an analogy that I think Brodie would like, is like a pride soccer-style kick right to the face of the pro wrestling community. But when I think of what I've learned over this year, as the calendar turns over to 2021, when I think of Amanda and the kids, I realize that's exactly what pro wrestling is. It's a community. It's not just a sport. It is a community. When the chips are down, we support each other. We love each other. Men and women from all over the world brought together by this one thing that we love. And tonight we come together again to rage against the dying of the light, to celebrate a great human being whose legacy, I hope, inspires us all to be a little bit better of a person every single day, to appreciate the people we love around us every single day, to appreciate, stop and smell the roses every single sunset, every sunrise, every day. I know I will. Because every day is a gift, every day is special. And every day that I got to spend with Brodie was just all the more special, and I'm grateful for that. And I love you, brother. And I'll never forget you.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Rewind-a-Dynamite. It's Jon, Pollock and Wai Ting, and we are coming at you following the 2-hour tribute show tonight on Dynamite for the late Jon Huber. And Wai, that was the most difficult 2 hours I have watched of a wrestling show. That was incredibly tough, but also just a wonderful tribute for 2 hours.
Oh yeah, highly emotional the entire 2 hours, but also highly entertaining. It was, I think, exactly like just a perfect way to be able to honor the memory of a man and to, ease the pain his family and friends are going through. Everybody just did such a great job.
Yeah, I mean, it was obviously very trying for all of these people. It was very evident in those performing of the circumstances that they were performing under. And it was, it was a mixture. Like, there were storyline elements, like there were people playing their characters. There was also like on and off, like they would go into the matches, but then come out of it. And it was just, everyone knew why they were here. I think it was very cathartic for those involved to be able to go out there and perform. The family was there as well. Like, I just thought that this was a wonderful tribute, but man, it was just so emotional throughout these 2 hours. I had to take several breaks during the show.
Yeah, I can understand it. It was, it was the first time we've had to see AEW go through something like this, and it was not just a segment that was dedicated to one person, but every segment, and even a main event profiling the man's family in particular. It was really it felt incredibly like familial, like not just, of course, like with Jon Huber's family, but just the entire AEW, really the entire wrestling community. I mean,
it reflected what the online response has been like since Saturday night. Like, this felt like what you have been reading, all of the endless tributes and memories. This was it put into a 2-hour wrestling show. That's kind of how it felt like, just an extension of the morning people have been going through.
Yeah, but obviously, with the means to do it on a much grander scale and in a much more kind of like wholly encompassing way that fans can't really do on their own. To be able to kind of put all that emotion into like this like 2-hour pro wrestling show, I think was of great service to the entire wrestling community.
Yeah, so it was a show that featured 5 matches, all involving members of the Dark Order going over. I mean, the matches were really secondary to kind of the memories, the moments, many tributes throughout all of the matches to Brodie Lee, and then a big closing tribute to him at the end of the show. So we will go through that. At the end, I think we'll go over just any news and notes. I think obviously this is first and foremost is the show on Wednesday night. So it began at Daly's place, and the entire roster was out on the stage. Production staff, everybody was out there, and Jim Ross opened it with "It's Wednesday, and you know what that means." And that was followed by a 10-bell salute, and there was Brodie Lee's family right out there with everybody else as well being there. And Brodie Jr., to me, the star of the show. He was there front row in a mask with a tailored suit, and I thought he was just the star of the show. I thought it was so great what they did for Brodie Jr. throughout this whole 2 hours.
AEW's latest signing.
-1, yes. He has signed a contract, and he's a champion for life.
Not bad. Not a bad start.
Yes. So we had a series of testimonials that aired throughout the night. It started with Jon Moxley, who goes way back with Brodie Lee before both got to the WWE, and talked about being in locker rooms with him, but emphasized how much that he loved being a dad, that wrestling was just a job to him. And he said he thought Brodie would appreciate this analogy, that this is like a pride soccer kick right to the gut. He talked about the community that wrestling breeds, and he hopes that Brodie's memory inspires everyone to stop and smell the roses. Every day is a gift. And it was a really nice, touching speech from Jon Moxley that was the first of several of these that we got throughout the night.
Incredibly, tremendous speech from Moxley, and I don't think it's any coincidence that pro wrestlers are so great at being able to convey emotion through words, so much more than the average human being. That even in a real life situation like this, when they're not here to sell or promote any sort of fight, they are able to convey that exact deep emotion in their minds so effectively on TV, and Moxley is among one of the best ones. And it was just a wonderful speech that really gave you a glimpse as to about the personal relationship this man had with several of these roster members, even if you never really saw them participate in maybe too many prolonged teams or feuds together. There's just a whole life and a whole web of relationships that this man had with so many people.
Yeah, and I would imagine that they taped a ton of these. I would wonder if they're probably going to post other ones that just couldn't fit into the show, because I would imagine that there were lots of these that they had.
Sure, yeah.
So for the night, it's the regular commentary team with the addition of Chris Jericho, who started it off completely out of character, just saying tonight is going to be a very tough night, but also a cathartic one. And then kind of just flipped the switch and said, now come on, let's have some energy. Let's do this for Brodie. And then kind of went into more of the inner circle leader version of Chris Jericho throughout the show. But I mean, mixed in with lots of comments about Brodie Lee as well. And it kind of, it veered in and out of AEW storylines versus the real life trauma that everybody is going through this week.
Well, in the end, I mean, this pro wrestling is meant for entertainment, and I think everybody kind of knows the circumstance here and realizes in the end, in order to pay tribute to the man, you do what you do best, and that's to entertain. And so I think Jericho on commentary, whether or not it was even intentionally planned for this particular show, or if he was just supposed to be there to do something, I thought added a good deal of levity to the situation. And at no point did I feel like it was too much for me. I mean,
not at all. I thought they balanced it. It would have been tough way for 2 hours of just without any of that. People needed some levity on this show, 100%. So I thought they balanced it really well. This was a very easy show in terms of just, hey, the baby faces are winning, the Dark Order's winning, and we're gonna have some fun tonight. But it's with extremely heavy hearts. I thought they balanced it wonderfully.
We should also mention Pro Wrestling Tees. They have a new shirt for Brodie Lee for this occasion, and all proceeds from the shirt are going to Brodie Lee's family. Also wanted to mention that CM Punk and Mick Foley have said that all of their January proceeds from their shirts will be going towards Brodie Lee's family. So wanted to make mention of that. And the site did crash during the show, so that's seems like it's a good sign. Last I checked, it's available right now, so if you wanted to get a shirt and show your appreciation for this particular show, ProWrestlingTees.com.
Yeah, that's a wonderful sign that so many people are going to get that shirt, and a great initiative by Pro Wrestling Tees, CM Punk, Mick Foley, and I'm sure there's going to be many, many others that will be following in that same vein. So the first match was the Young Bucks and Colt Cabana against Matt Hardy and Private Party. And this was the first of many times that the Dark Order came out as a unit. They're all fighting back tears. It was very tough, you could see, for them to be going through here. Early on,
Colt was just like,
it was really tough for him. When you think about how far back that he must have known him, like this was, I imagine this was probably the toughest night for many of these people that they've ever wrestled under these circumstances.
Oh, no doubt. Absolutely. Certainly for Colt, like his most important performance thus far in AEW, maybe, throughout his career, even if you might ask him tonight, and again, it's like so much of, I think, what the mass audience has seen of, Jon Huber has been his performance as Luke Harper. And so immediately you don't really think about all the relationships he's had for the years and years and years he spent on the independent wrestling scene, or just, elsewhere, but outside of WWE. Clearly on this episode, like, you got to see a lot of tribute and a lot of those connections, being displayed.
The Young Bucks, think of like the U.S. Indies that they would have been on shows together, going to Dragon Gate. Like there's a lot of history beyond just AEW for so many of these performers. So they triple team Mark Quinn, then Cassidy, and then we got a triple drop kick by the Bucks and Cabana taking out Matt Hardy. And Cabana, I thought he shined in this match. Hit this Asai moonsault to the floor. They got into a debate about who has the best sleeper, with Jericho suggesting Mr. Wrestling 2, and then Tony piping in saying Johnny Weaver. Jericho also brings up the stat that Brodie Lee was supposed to debut in his hometown of Rochester on March 18th, and that was, their first week here in Daly's place after the shutdown. They had the heat on Matt Jackson, and then he finally got to his corner after faking out Matt Hardy with a super kick tease, and instead hit him with his own twist of fate, tagging Cabana, who just ran wild, hit a cabrata, head scissors, the flying apple. And then Cassidy ducks a discus lariat that Colt threw in honor of Brodie Lee. Hardy then crotched Quen on the top by mistake. Nick hits the big top rope Hurricane Rana. There's a gin and juice delivered to Nick. And we were just into this furious final sequence. Swanton to Cassidy. Quen hits the shooting star. You think it's over, but the cover gets broken up. And then in the reference of all references, on this night, Chris Jericho worked in a reference to Boom Boom Jeffrion of the Montreal Canadiens,
who is not a goalie.
Was not a goalie.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Great match. Any like opening show match featuring a team like the Bucks, I think is guaranteed to be incredibly hot. This one lived up to that very high standard, but with just an air of of course, just a far more significant feeling attached to it all, and that certainly goes for all the other participants here as well. Colt Cabana looked amazing here. All the motion that you saw on his face clearly kind of like what was put into this performance. It was, I think, his best performance I've seen him in AEW thus far. Hardy and Private Party did great jobs as heels. Highly emotional, but again, highly entertaining match.
Yeah, so sorry, the ending sequence was the Gin and Juice got stopped with a Chicago skyline, and then they did an indie taker on Quen, and Cabana used the Superman cover. Excellent finish to this. I thought Colt was great in this match. 13 minutes, 31 seconds. Really fun 6-man tag with unusual partners here in Cabana with the Bucks.
I really enjoyed that aspect of tonight's show. It was almost like, On the one hand, yes, like, babyface kind of heel boundaries and storylines were respected, but at the same time, it was like, um, they kind of weren't. Like, it was almost like
not with Cody and 10. I mean, they talked about like, this is one night only. These are the circumstances, but that was part of the kind of uniqueness of tonight. It's that matches that we're probably not going to see these kinds of combinations and teams outside of tonight in most cases.
Yeah, like this was a show that was bigger than the typical, week to week storyline. This was a show, all about, again, the sense of family and this sense of community. And it was almost like you were watching something that, could have taken place behind closed doors, amongst these people themselves. And, the Dark Order could be nothing but the top baby faces on this show. Again, just in respect to, the group that this guy led.
Brodie Jr. is showing in the front row in the suit and mask, just all decked out here. Then the Acclaimed came out, and before they can, Max Caster can even deliver his rap, they get jumped by Frankie Kazarian and Christopher Daniels, leading to super kicks delivered to the Acclaimed and a bionic elbow with Colt for the first time making the Dark Order symbol. So a continuation of that story that's going to progress with SCU and the Bucks teaming up next week against the Acclaimed and TH2, and I mean, kind of identified, like, it's always been Dark Order and Colt Cabana. He's always clarified that he's not a member of Dark Order, and this kind of was an indication of his indoctrination to Dark Order.
So can we call him Colt Cabana yet?
That's pretty good. That took me a second there. I didn't.
I'm sure he's got a shirt. That's kind of obvious.
That should be the next one to come out. Darby Allin was the next testimonial. He said that when Brodie Lee arrived, he told Sammy Guevara that's the guy he wants to wrestle. He was his number one choice to wrestle. He was a guy that had no ego, was willing to share knowledge with all the younger talent, and just kind of put over like what a great addition this guy was to the roster. And this guy was amazing.
Yeah, he says he's the number one man he wished he could have wrestled, which is heartbreaking, but also shows you the amount of like reverence, a younger generation had for him.
Yeah, and like when I was thinking of like these two would have had a phenomenal match, like with their styles, it would have been outstanding.
Mm-hmm.
Lance Archer, Evil Uno, and Stu Grayson versus Eddie Kingston, the Butcher, and the Blade. Archer comes out and he's decked out in the old Brodie Lee, Luke Harper outfit with the white shirt, the jeans, and
really cool touch. Not something I expected, but I thought it was really cool.
Mm-hmm. Like everyone had like their own little tributes. Like there was a lot of purple on this show, and like different spots that were incorporated into matches. It was like a lot of people just came up with their own little tributes, and there were just such a variety of them. Eddie Kingston said he loves Brodie. I'm dedicating this match to you, and I'm going to prove the Dark Order is nothing without you, and just gets right into the match, and there was back into his character.
Well, there was a great moment where like he comes up with a mic, and the mic for whatever reason does not work, and the professional that he is does not panic and just sees Justin Roberts doing the announcement, walks over to him like with a mean face as the heel that he is, and just snags the mic away from Roberts and continues his promo without missing a beat. So that was awesome.
Total pro. Jericho compares Brodie Lee to Owen Hart and Eddie Guerrero, saying these were guys that no one had any bad word to say about. They were universally loved individuals in this industry. I really liked Excalibur's contribution here, where he talked about not just like with Evil Uno and working with Brodie Lee on like when he would come up from upstate New York into Montreal, but also with the Blade coming up in upstate New York, like just the independent connections that some of these guys had with Brodie.
Absolutely, yeah. Again, so all these things that, if you're only a WWE viewer of his or just a WWE and AEW viewer, you'd have no idea he had this history shared with so many people.
Grayson hit a spinning Brodie slam onto Blade, and then they had the advantage on Evil Uno. He hit a half and half suplex onto Kingston, another Brodie suplex spot. Archer then scales the top and does the moonsault onto Blade, and then pounces Butcher. Kingston catches Grayson with a DDT for a near fall, and then Grayson lands a flying DDT to Butcher on the apron, and it's followed by Fatality, and it ends with Evil Uno getting the pinfall on Blade. Spectacular ending. I thought Stu Grayson especially just showed a ton of great fire here. And then Uno and Grayson had a big hug, and they all take turns attacking Eddie Kingston, culminating with Jake Roberts hitting a short arm clothesline onto Eddie.
Yeah, Jake getting physical was something I absolutely did not expect, and made for a big reaction live. And that was the other thing too. Despite this being this was a live show, right? Live broadcast.
Yeah.
Like this, it did not suffer from any of the kind of like lack of crowd noise of maybe previous live broadcasts. Like this sounded very, very like active, from the crowd. It sounded very full. It sounded very like good.
And we got one take Jake here on live TV.
He did well. He did great.
Maybe Okada should be looking out. Maybe we got the
rain snaker.
Yeah, Kazujika. Sounded good in my head.
I kind of like Lance Archer with this group.
Lance Archer was given a major spotlight here, and you could see, especially Jericho was like going above and beyond, putting the spotlight on Lance Archer. Like this was quite the outing for Archer. Grayson is very underrated. Like he is consistently great. We don't always see him wrestling on Dynamite, but yeah, I was with you. Like this really did click with Archer's involvement.
Yeah, and I think it's a reminder that Uno and Grayson are tremendous babyface wrestlers, and they get to like wrestle this style even as heels, but when they're doing it to elicit a positive reaction, they are so incredibly effective.
The next video was full of family photos with Brodie and his wife and two sons, and we got comments from Dax Harwood, Arn Anderson, Colt Cabana, and Bryce Remsburg, and this was just heartbreaking.
Oh, completely, yeah. Like Bryce in total tears, talking about how they got a chance to reconnect after several years apart with them reuniting in AEW, but this time they would only talk about family instead of wrestling. And yeah, again, just some real emotion that you got to see.
Bryce shared this great story and photo of the night that Brodie arrived back in March. Bryce got the old Chikara guys together. It was like Orange Cassidy was there, Brodie was there, maybe there was someone else, and they just sent a photo to Cesaro just with the text, "We got him."
That's awesome. That's great.
Hangman Page, John Silver, and Alex Reynolds versus MJF, Santana, and Ortiz. At the beginning, MJF comes out with Santana and Ortiz in his new Puerto Rican trunks. This was the funniest moment of the night, and it was some great levity on this show, seeing MJF in these Puerto Rican trunks.
So I think, last week we saw that scene with him, with Santana, of course, talking about his grandfather's passing and like wiping away those tears. That seemed to be incredibly, like, it was a very genuine moment for the MJF character, but you and I weren't really sure if that was supposed to be him just kind of like, kind of playing Santana, or at least like trying to get in their good graces in a disingenuous way. I have no doubt, like what he said was completely genuine, but it certainly felt like tonight, wearing these tights, going certainly overboard with like kissing up to Proud and Powerful. That seems to be the direction. Would you agree?
I think so. Like the idea, I think, is that, okay, he has been able to indoctrinate himself with Santana and Ortiz. They've taken him under their, they've accepted him now, and that's his grand plan, was to get get their trust, and then he has a larger plan.
Right. Something I've also enjoyed them doing is that they've started adding picture-in-picture clips to give you kind of context to some of the matchups that you're about to see. In this case, like they showed MJF pinning Paige from like a year ago in a match that I don't think anybody...
They did that tonight with Private Party and the Bucks going back over a year. They showed that tonight.
Yeah, these aren't even necessarily matches that are specifically relevant to any sort of storyline, but I think they give some respect to, like, again, the sporting aspect of it. If this was, like the Bulls taking on, I don't know, the Hornets or something, like you would talk about, the last time these two teams met, and just to give you a bit more kind of, interest perhaps in the matchup. So it's something I've like AEW, I don't think uses their like video pre-production elements enough, and to be able to incorporate it in this fashion, I think adds to the show.
Silver and Reynolds get into the ring. They open up their jackets to reveal the papers that they throw at Santana and Ortiz. This got a giant pop. And then Silver is in his outfit that was gifted to him by Brodie Lee.
Yeah, replica of Brodie Lee's tights, yes.
Paige starts the match with MJF, and it leads to a moment where Paige brings out his own papers and throws them at MJF. MJF bails to the floor, and then he gets into the face of Brodie Lee Jr. and is just screaming at him, and that would play into later. MJF then ducks away from a buckshot lariat. They get control of Paige, and Silver receives the hot tag, and this guy was just the ultimate babyface in this match, and he was Super Mario after the mushroom and getting the flower.
And the star.
Probably got the star as well. This guy was hopped up on everything. He delivered a senton off the apron, high cross to Ortiz, sit-out powerbomb, then a Greco-Roman knuckle lock into a Canadian destroyer, followed up by a suicide dive. This was right up there with that incredible sequence a few years ago from Cesaro on TV. MJF finally cuts him off with the heat seeker, and Santana and Ortiz double team. Reynolds makes the save. Wardlow gets involved, attacking Alex Reynolds when Erick Rowan runs down and chokeslams Wardlow and takes him to the back. Just a great idea, and this was a genuine surprise and so perfect.
I was shocked. I think, most people were. It was, I don't know why I didn't think of it. It's like, he's kind of out there. He's a free agent, and on a show like this, the perfect kind of like shocking run-in. That just like even made Pauline, like, like my fiance who doesn't watch wrestling at all, recognize the association, and like even she like was, remarked that this was, wow, what was happening? It's like a crossing of universes. So really cool.
Ortiz is then hit with a stunner, German suplex, and buckshot, but MJF puts his foot onto the bottom rope and then tears the mask of -1. And Brodie Jr. pulls out a kendo stick and nails MJF with the kendo stick. And that takes out MJF. John Silver hits the discus lariat after twirling the mustache and pins Ortiz. The man was just broken down in tears afterwards. Rowan returns with a sign that reads, "Goodbye for now, my brother. See you down the road." This was just, man, such an emotional ending.
Yeah, up until this point, certainly for me, the toughest part of the show thus far. The combination of just seeing John Silver like really take several moments, just like with his head buried in the mat after getting that pinfall, all this kind of like emotion just spilling out of him, and then seeing this giant man in Erick Rowan, with that message and himself like struggling to keep those tears flowing from his head. Like big dudes crying is always just like, that always gets me. It was man, the amount of like, time that those two must have spent on the road together isn't, like I'm really glad he had a presence on this show.
It was a wonderful idea to think of that. It was tremendous the way they did it here. That smile on Brodie's face after he hit with the kendo stick, I mean, that was just great to see.
It was. like initially you see MJF like messing around with the kid, and it's like it's uncomfortable, even in a pro wrestling context. Even if you know what's about to come, it's somewhat uncomfortable. But then like you see the results, you see the kid play along and get this great
He was
moment.
so happy at the end, like getting to be involved like that on what's probably been the most difficult week of his life. I thought it was a great thing that they did.
And it takes, a heel who is willing to commit to doing something very uncomfortable, like an MJF who, never ever breaks character to bring that moment out. And yeah, successful on all fronts.
Yeah. So this was a very, very heavy episode as we continue to go through this. Eddie Kingston was the next video tribute. He said he's going to miss Brodie Lee, someone who believed in Eddie when he didn't believe in himself. And he tells their children that their dad isn't gone. He's a warrior who took care of his family. And that's something that not all people do. So
amazing.
yeah.
A great speech. Again, just like Moxley, somebody who's incredibly eloquent and able to just say some really, really touching words.
Anna Jay and Ty Conti versus Britt Baker and Penelope Ford. Conti was just throwing Ford around, holding onto her wrist, and then Baker nailed her with a knee strike, allowing Ford to hit a German. Rebel grabbed Conti on the floor and wasn't sure where to place her on the apron. She went to put her on one place, then put her to the next. It was a setup for Ford. Then Anna Jay gets the tag, who they noted that got the 99 number as a tribute to Wayne Gretzky. It was
Yes.
Brodie's idea.
Huge hockey fan, yeah. Well, shouldn't have been 93.
I think so. I mean, that was one of the coolest things this week, that not only did the Toronto Maple Leafs tweet out their condolences, but Doug Gilmour tweeted about Brodie Lee, which I can imagine that would have been like the greatest honor, that the killer himself, number 93, the man who went through those 92-93 playoffs with an ankle, shouldn't have even been on skates, and here he is.
Did he ever talk about why he wasn't a Buffalo Sabres fan?
I don't know why, but I was told like his favorite team was the Toronto Maple Leafs, and that wrestling, like hockey, was just behind wrestling in terms of the sports that he loved the most. But the Maple Leafs, I don't know what drew him to that. Maybe it was just like I don't know. I don't know what draws you to the Leafs over the Sabres.
Certainly
because, I
not
mean,
their
think of the era that Brodie Lee grew up. Like, this guy was born in 1979. I mean, this guy probably, if he, as a child, I mean, that's the Ballard years. Like, this was the darkest of the dark times for the Maple Leafs. But maybe he really got into those early 90s teams. Maybe it was like Doug Gilmour, Dave Andrechuk, Felix Potvin, Ken Manderville.
Absolutely.
I could play this game all day. Dave Ellett. Nikolai Borshevsky. Okay,
yeah.
Move on.
Peter
Jay gets the tag. She does the Dark Order sign, and she is holding back tears. Baker attacks. There's a spinning neck breaker. Ford comes in, goes for a handspring, but gets caught in the Queen Slayer. Baker is taken out by Conti, who then yanks Rebel off the apron, and Penelope Ford taps, with Anna Jay getting the submission win.
Huge spotlight match on Anna Jay, and I thought she did really well. Certainly a difficult performance under the circumstances, but I mean, like in the case of all the Dark Order members tonight, it made them all better.
And then Shivani came into the ring with Britt Baker, and she says it's a conspiracy. She says Anna Jay's rigged. Ty Conti is rigged. The whole thing is a big rig, with a wink to the camera of one of Brodie Lee's many nicknames. And then Thunder Rosa jumped Britt Baker, attacking her, and that will set up a match between those two in 2 weeks' time.
2 weeks, yep.
So we did do an angle here with the two of them. They laid out everything for the New Year's Smash shows, which will be over the next 2 weeks. So on next week's show, it's pretty much everything that was scheduled for tonight has been moved back a week. Snoop Dogg is here next week. It's Kenny Omega versus Rey Fenix for the AEW title. Jon Moxley returns. Hikaru Shida versus Abaddon for the women's title. The Young Bucks Daniels and Kazarian against the Acclaimed and TH2, Jake Hager versus Wardlow, Cody Rhodes versus Matt Sydal, and Chris Jericho on commentary.
So does that mean Snoop is not doing commentary?
They have just promoted an appearance, but I imagine he'll be sitting in on commentary at least at some point, which I know some are already hoping that we get Snoop Dogg calling Kenny Omega and Rey Fenix this year.
Oh,
I should say next year.
The next year, yeah.
Hey, how would that qualify? Because like they would be taping that this week, but it airs next week. So where would that fall under?
Oh, for best of and worst of, you mean?
Yeah.
Do
we go with air date?
I think we go by air date these days.
Okay.
Like especially in the era of like pre-taped, like what is it, cinematic matches? Like I think you got to go by air date.
In 2 weeks, they've announced Darby Allin and Brian Cage for the TNT title. That we had known. Miro versus Chuck Taylor. Britt Baker versus Thunder Rosa. FTR against Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus. And Pac versus Eddie Kingston. So they pretty much loaded up the next 2 weeks. That's pretty much, they're pretty packed shows already.
Yeah. Both shows I'm looking forward to. They've always done well. Like anytime they put a lot of promotional effort into like these big shows. So yeah, let's see.
And we've got the New Year's Evil special is next Wednesday night, so that will be going up against AEW.
Both big shows. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Chris Jericho did his video. He said he worked Brodie Lee 27 times, and he knows that because Alex Marvez told him that stat today. And he told a story of when they were in Saudi Arabia together. He was in his hotel room, and he was looking at the ceiling, and there was some sticker on the ceiling, and the sticker was bothering him. I don't know how this sticker could be so intrusive, but Brodie Lee came in and he said, "Man, this sticker, what's up with this sticker?" And he said, "That's not a sticker. That's an arrow pointing to Mecca." And Jericho was dumbfounded that, how did you know this? And that was Brodie Lee, a man that just had so much information and trivia at his disposal. And Jericho said, "I had a big hand in bringing Brodie Lee to AEW because I believed in him, and he proved this year that he could be a main event star."
He also said his dog liked Brodie Lee, and his dog
hates everybody, but yes, loved Brodie Lee. So, I mean, there were some nice stories here that Chris Jericho wove in. The main event was the Brodie Jr. 6-man dream match with Brian Cage, Ricky Starks, and Powerhouse Hobbs against Brodie Jr.'s 3 favorite wrestlers, Cody, Orange Cassidy, and 10, Preston Vance, in easily the biggest match of Preston Vance's career.
Oh, no doubt. Yeah. What an honor for Preston Vance, and how cool is it that Brodie Jr. like has taste that is not just, for the most popular wrestler, the most dominant wrestler. Like he's got some pretty like original independent views, and Preston Vance 10 getting that kind of like number one nod of like approval from him is so awesome. Yeah, really great. We should say he's -1 because Brodie is the exalted one. Brodie Lee Sr. is exalted one, so they've called him -1.
Yes. Cody is hugging Bryce Remsburg at the beginning. Jericho also mentions Brodie's other son, Nolan, who they explained, would not be old enough to understand, but one day will be able to go back and watch this to remember his father. Orange Cassidy came in. He teased a test of strengths with Hobbs, but then put the hands in the pockets. We go through the break. They had the advantage on Orange until Cody got the tag. Jericho believes that Ricky Starks reminds me a little bit of Dwayne Johnson. Don't you think, Jim Ross? So they're setting the comparison bar very high for Ricky Starks.
Might be the haircut.
Could be. 10 did a signal to the sky before hitting a Brodie bomb. Then Hobbs runs through Cassidy. Cage hits a flatliner onto Cody. Arn and Taz are on the outside, and both have chairs. And after we saw Jake get physically involved, I think all bets were off if we were going to get a throwdown with Arn and Taz in 2020. But then Orange hits the Orange Punch, and a Crossroads is delivered to Ricky Starks. But the big finishing spot is courtesy of 10, who hits a spine buster, and Bryce Remsburg counts 3, and 10, Preston Vance pins Ricky Starks and gets the big spotlight. Cody was so happy for Preston Vance after this win.
It felt, very much like, incredibly major moment for him, because as Jericho would say, who knows if he'll ever be in the main event again. I love just seeing like special moments for performers. Like, this is part of the reason why like I think I enjoyed like even the Ultimate Fighter so much, because like every match was such a big moment for every person. And in wrestling, so often we see the same matchups over and over and over again, and you can see it in the performers. This is not a special match. There's nothing different or memorable about this one compared to any other match that they might have, throughout the year. But like, this show is a very special circumstance. But even like in AEW's ability to book brand new talent, certainly like anytime you had a TNT Open Challenge with somebody who wasn't on the roster, who was just getting a big tryout, like I'm always captivated for those types of matches, because in reality this is one of the biggest, if not the biggest, match of the man's career. So this was one of those moments for Preston Vance. 10, very entertaining match, and I with 13 minutes left on the show, I was wondering what was going to fill the rest of it.
Well, before we went to break, Team Taz made their comeback, attacking the babyfaces, including Hook suplexing Orange Cassidy.
Pretty nice suplex from Hook.
Very nice suplex. I feel like this, will we get Hook and Orange Cassidy?
As the match? Maybe.
Perhaps so.
It's a big
by hook
role
or by crook. That's got to be his finish.
Ooh. I think that's a big role for Hook. I mean, like, if somebody going up against Orange Cassidy, I think needs to have a certain ability to really like do, no pun intended, like the bulk of the heavy lifting for a match like that. I wonder if that's a little too much.
Oh, just announce it, and then we get like 3 weeks of promos from Taz.
Yeah.
You orange pulp motherfucker.
Stole his color.
Did we not forecast this Orange Cassidy Taz feud months ago, and we kind of going in that direction if like Hook was specifically given the suplex spot to Orange here?
Perhaps, yeah.
Cage powerbomb Cody, and then the lights go out. Darby Allin's music plays, and he comes out from the stands. But then the lights go out a second time, and it's Sting. A gigantic pop, and it's Excalibur who takes the "It's Sting" line. Snuck it away from Tony.
Kind of hard to do your job, though, if you can't say "It's Sting" when the guy comes out.
Well,
there's the guy.
It happens to be Steve Borden. Hey, that's our team now.
What?
Borden.
Oh, like Allen and Borden together?
No, I'm saying like skateboarding.
Oh, Borden. That's great.
Darby's got Brodie written over his face paint, and Excalibur. Okay, this was the silliest part of the show. We watched, like, they actually did close-ups of the snow machine shooting out this snow, like a direct cut, establishing this machine that sends out the snow. And then we go to Team Taz, who are selling the snow and how cold it is. This was the silliest moment, with Ricky Starks like shivering and like contorting himself from the cold snow.
Well, it could still be cold even if it's from a machine. I mean, isn't a snow machine just like, don't they use like blocks of ice?
I don't know how cold this would have been.
I don't know if it was just confetti. Like, it could have been, real kind of like chips of cold like ice.
Well, I thought Team Taz's response to this was rather amusing. And they explained Team Taz is upset that it's cold, And they just had a big stare down here with the baby faces in the ring, with Cody, Preston, Orange, Sting, and Darby Allin. What a 5-man team.
Yeah, quite the roster of babyfaces.
And it was 5-on-5 here if you include Taz and Hook here with Team Taz.
5-on-5, right.
The final segment was their tribute for Brodie Lee. Cody is in the ring. He quoted Samuel Johnson of how you can judge someone's character by how they treat someone that can't do anything for them. And he says that he talked about all the positivity that Brodie provided this locker room and everybody. And he welcomes -1 Brodie Jr. to come out. And Brodie walks out with his mother Amanda, and they have Brodie's boots. And they place them in the middle of the ring, and Tony Khan presents the TNT Championship to Brodie Jr. and names him the TNT Champion for life, as Brodie Lee was the greatest TNT Champion, with all due respect to Cody.
Yeah, I thought they would end the show with the match, and instead ending it with something like this was, I think, going to, like, for me, like, the extra mile in just I don't know, focusing on not just the man but his family, and again to alleviate some of the pain that they're going through right now. These are some memories that they'll all remember for the rest of their lives, and I can't think of a better way to spend your airtime than doing something like that.
It was such a touching tribute. The entire episode really was, and then they closed it off with a video for Brodie Lee, just with all these highlights and photos of his family, old footage. They even had shots of him with the Wyatt family. It was a wonderful video to end. It was an incredibly emotional show.
Slideshows, man. Damn. Those damn slideshows. Yes. Yeah, like giving some presence to, everybody who might have been involved in this guy's life, from the independents to, of course, AEW, but also to WWE. And I imagine plenty of WWE roster members also watching tonight's show with tears. It was some of the most powerful television I've seen. Not even really a show like, we could really create or rank it, but I would say
it's a show you will never forget. If you watched it, it was totally its own episode that you can't compare it to any other Dynamites, and of course the others being when we have had tributes for the likes of Owen Hart, Eddie Guerrero. This was just I think a really great thing that all of these people were able to have this to focus on this week, to go out there to honor this person, but do so with a very, very heavy heart. I couldn't imagine going through with this. And all credit to the broadcasters for these 2 hours. Like, these ones were as close as anyone, and they had to call this for 2 hours, and I imagine that was a difficult task.
Oh, completely. Especially for some of them who would have to go on to call dark after this as well. Probably still calling dark at this very moment as we're recording this. But we should also mention, like, this was a late change from Tony Khan. Like, I believe Dave Meltzer said, like, he was having some conversation with Tony Khan about it all, and then, like, Tony just kind of tore up the script for that week and last minute booked this whole thing. And absolutely the right call.
They should be very proud of this show. Everyone involved with this should be so proud of these 2 hours, what they did for Brodie Lee's family.
Well, for wrestling fans at large.
Yes. I think everyone needed a show like this after, this news, but most importantly, the family, I think, really, it just seemed like they very much wanted this as well. So I can't say enough good things about, these 2 hours. It was awful circumstances, but man, it was very tough to watch. But I knew that all day. This was going to be a really tough show to watch, and it was.
So I said that we can't really grade or judge, but I didn't even really think about that as I put the poll up. But nonetheless, out of 10, the board gave this the highest rating, as some might expect.
Wait a minute. Can we give this show a Preston Vance?
Oh, a -1? Oh, sorry, Preston Vance.
Preston Vance is 10 way.
Yeah, sorry, I got the names mixed up. A Preston Vance, about as close as you can get. It's a 9.73, so let's round up and say, yes, it is a Preston Vance.
All right, let's read this feedback. Andy from London. I'm very grateful to have been able to enjoy Jon Huber's work over the past decade as both Luke Harper and Brodie Lee. His TNT title win over Cody is one of my all-time favorite moments in wrestling TV history, something I will always remember. All involved tonight should be immensely proud of the show. I hope it's a night that the Huber family will cherish forever and can be a small step in their healing process.
We go to McGuire, who says, in doing what they've done, AEW has shown a ton of respect for not only their roster and staff, but their fans as well. They didn't attempt to hide the reality of the situation or the emotional toll that the grieving process was having on the wrestlers. It was like an episode of Fresh Prince. I lost my father when I was 8 years old. The lengths they are going to make Brodie Jr. feel included and welcomed is a special sort of kindness. They're really making a difference in the kid's life. It's wonderful to see him be able to smile and laugh during such tragic circumstances. A 10 out of 10.
Yeah, I thought that was really wonderfully handled. And yes, and very sorry for your loss as well, McGuire. Mark writes, a beautiful celebration for a great human being. Everything people are saying about him is true. He touched countless people over the last 15 years. For background here, Mark is an independent wrestling promoter that has worked with Brodie Lee in the past. He goes on to say, the kind of guy who as recently as August, he gave his time to help raise funds, over $80,000 for our annual Fighting Back Wrestling with Cancer fundraiser for the Canadian Cancer Society, this year as an online-only fundraiser. A man who just wanted to help his friends and those he worked with before making it. And some he continued to work to the end. He remembered people along the way on his journey from the indies all the way to where he ended up. He was a good man, a real person in a business that far too often celebrate those who were the complete opposite.
Brad the Archivist. Guys, tonight I just broke down. I was crying in every segment. Being a father of 2 boys myself this last week has been hard. I just can't imagine not being able to see my boys grow into men. Brodie sounds like the father we should all strive to be. Bryce Remsburg comment about him being on the Mount Rushmore of wrestling fathers was so touching. I'm happy AEW did all this for Brodie and his family. I actually feel so much better after watching that.
Yeah, completely. I would echo a lot of the sentiments Brad said throughout this week. Anthony, I haven't felt this heartbroken watching a wrestling show since Eddie Guerrero passed away. I personally can't rate this show because I just can't put a rating on what is a memorial. Yeah, noted.
We got to Andrew from Cape Breton. There were certain beats tonight on the show that were slightly uncomfortable for a tribute show, but when you remember this show is pretty much done for an 8-year-old, it makes more sense. The heat spots with the Acclaimed and MJF seemed to be done for the sole purpose to get Brodie Jr. involved. The one thing I noticed was the smile on his face after he whacked MJF. So it seemed AEW was able to do more storyline elements because quite frankly, this might be what he would like to see being a massive wrestling fan. I've been watching Brodie since 2007 and seeing longtime friends, rivals, and the end tribute with some pictures from WWE wrestlers. It really showed how much he was loved.
Our next one here is from Richard. This was a tough one to watch, but AEW did everything right with this one. The emphasis on the Dark Order, the surprise of Erick Rowan, and just total emotion throughout the show. You can't put a rating on this one. That's from Rich in Winnipeg.
We got a Jake from the Windy City who says, tremendous tribute should make you cry and laugh, make you grieve and reminisce. Seeing his son laid down his wrestling boots in the middle of the ring while his father's entrance song was playing for the final time, and Tony Khan handing him the TNT Championship, the very last championship belt his father won. It was very beautiful. I cannot imagine a better tribute show than the one AEW just did. Moments that tug at your heartstrings and others that made you smile from ear to ear. Great job by everyone in putting that together. No other brotherhood is well connected like a wrestling family. Rest in peace, Brodie.
Noah from Vaughan. As someone that didn't watch wrestling until 2009, I really had no prior experience of watching someone I looked up to in wrestling passing away in the middle of their career. Brodie Lee's passing was just so tragic, and I cannot applaud AEW enough for the perfect tribute show tonight. Major props to all the performers for going out there tonight, and all the matches were fantastic. A 10 out of 10 show, if there ever was one.
Stevie says, this was an amazing way to honor and celebrate a life. An emotional roller coaster of an episode that had me in tears many times. My only complaint or question would be, are we overexposing Hook? The kid looks like he is in high school still and makes Dominic Mysterio look as charismatic as Ric Flair. We've barely seen him do anything yet.
I mean, he's been very, very slowly introduced, I would say. Like tonight was like the most notable thing he did, and it was one spot. Scrump from Pro Wrestling Tees. I'm not a man that's afraid to cry. I talk about it being okay to cry, so as to break the stigma that men shouldn't cry, and I genuinely thought I could keep it together for this show. Yet there I was with red eyes as if I had just hung out with Braden Harrington. What an awesome show filled with so many emotional gut punches that include that post-show with Silver and Rowan. And now that the cat is out of the bag, the Brodie Lee Memorial shirts crushed the record for most shirts sold in a 24-hour period previously held by Sting in 2 hours. On top of what equates to a 3-day sales worth of Brodie shirts that we were already working on, it's awesome to see the outpouring of support for Brodie and his family. So that is fantastic news that they've been able to raise so much for the family in such a short amount of time since those shirts went on sale.
Thanks for that bit of info, Scrump. We go to Luke from Quebec, who says, I honestly didn't think I'd get that sad, considering that wasn't someone I knew personally. But when an emotional Eric raised that sign as Silver cried on the floor, I teared up. I was actually surprised how they were able to create matches that showcase Dark Order while still advancing and staying true to the current storylines and feuds. This was a class act show by AEW and hopefully a cathartic moment for all these performers we enjoy. As good of a show as it was, here's hoping we don't get anything like this again for a solid decade.
And the last one is from Raymond, a perfect tribute to a wonderful man that had a positive impression and impact on everyone he came in contact with. I cannot imagine a better tribute to his life from his peers and the company his career ended with. A beautiful, exceptional, unforgettable night. Top marks all around. And that is all of our feedback for tonight's show. So thank you for everyone for sharing all of your thoughts and about the show and Brodie Lee by extension. Wait, you have any closing thoughts? Do you want to go over just a couple of news items before we get out of here?
Sure. Let's do some news.
So just catching up on a few notes, SmackDown from Friday, as we had suspected, it ended up doing a huge number. They had a lead-in from the NFL that did 11.5 million viewers. If you include it was also simulcast on the NFL Network. If you include that, it was over 20 million watching that game. So SmackDown finished with 3,303,000 viewers, a 0.96 in the demo, only behind the NFL and NBA that day on network television, and their second highest number ever since moving to Fox, trailing the debut show that had The Rock. So a big number, and that does kind of go into this Raw number this week, which, did better than I thought. And I don't really have any clear explanation, but one of them, do you put any credence into, SmackDown doing such a big number that Raw gained something as a result of that? Or do you think that both are not correlated?
It's hard for me to suddenly see a connection this week. When previously I don't get the sense that really existed.
Raw had nothing going for it. Like, there was nothing that they were promoting all weekend beyond the Orton Alexa stuff. The matches weren't announced till very late in the day, and it held up a lot better than I thought it would, especially given the fact we're not coming off a pay-per-view. There wasn't anything big going on. So I don't know, but Raw, it was their best number since the night after the Survivor Series. So it's not even like it's just topping, it's their best number in over a month.
Was there any change in competition that you're aware of?
I mean, we're talking about lesser competition from, regular programming, but the NFL, it was an enormous NFL game they went against because the Bills and Patriots was on both ESPN, like always, but also on ABC. So you had 14.4 million people watching the NFL game. So it's not like they had an easy night football-wise.
Yeah, I mean, your guess would be as good as mine. I'm sure that if you really dug into perhaps some of the stats and minute-by-minute numbers, maybe there's an answer, but I'm not smart enough to give it.
They were up 4.5% in viewers, only down 2% in their main demo, which was the 18 to 49 figure, which was a 0.52. So they were third for the night on cable. Males were up. Males 12 to 34 were up 19% this week, and it was their best number in that category since October 19th, while women were down. Women 18 to 49 did fall 15%, and women 12 to 34 were down 9.5%. So overall, it was a good number for Raw, although the third-hour drops were still sizable. We were talking like double-digit drops in everything except for their over 50 audience, which held up the best. They were only down 9% in the third hour. Last week, we had that giant tune-out by that older demo where the first to third hour drop was 25%. So it wasn't, it recovered somewhat this week. So that was the Raw figure. And other notes we have, Kenny Omega and the Good Brothers will be on Impact next week on January 5th, coming out of their best of shows the past 2 weeks. They have also announced the addition of Deonna Purrazzo versus Taya Valkyrie for the Hard to Kill pay-per-view for the Knockouts title. That's coming up January 16th. And after we went through these best of shows, and where do you sense the level of intrigue for the Kenny Omega Dynamite Impact storyline that's going on right now? Do you think that Impact needs to do something to revitalize things? Do you think that it's riding a good wave going into this pay-per-view that's going to be the ultimate destination? What's your thoughts on where the Omega story stands?
I certainly think like after the first week and the buzz surrounding it, I sense a dwindling interest in people wanting to watch Tuesday's Impact itself. But I do think by the time the pay-per-view comes around, Kenny Omega being in a match, reunited with the Good Brothers, and really just the promise of a Kenny Omega match on pay-per-view outside of AEW, I think that you'll see some interest start to pick up that weekend. But I've been somewhat disappointed in that we've, the segments that you get to see of Kenny with Don Callis or Tony Khan and Tony Schiavone appearing on Impact have been tremendously entertaining. But it's felt very one-sided thus far this feud. So there have been promises or at least teases of, Tony Khan scouting members of the Impact roster. I think once you get the answer from Impact on AEW television, you will start to see this pick back up. But for the moment, it definitely is maybe, certainly less than maybe the first week.
Yeah. I do think the pay-per-view is going to do, by Impact standards, do well. I think that is still intriguing to people to get a Kenny Omega match on pay-per-view, but I think like your relative definition of well is kind of by Impact standards. Like this is not going to be, I think, a gigantic pay-per-view, but we will see what happens. It's more interesting of what is coming out of that. What is the next chapter of this? This is sort of, you're going to get the match in an Impact ring featuring Kenny Omega, and does that lead to a match with Rich Swann beyond this and Impact talent going back to AEW? I guess that's where people's interest lies.
Yes.
And the last story here, the UFC, after a big year away, they have announced Conor McGregor's coming back on January 23rd. Pay-per-view prices are going up. We're moving from $64.99 a show to $69.99 on ESPN Plus. They did this exact same thing, like exact 1 year ago, right before McGregor was to come back and fight Donald Cerrone. ESPN Plus increased the price to $64.99. So now they're increasing it another $5. And
who determines the price increases? ESPN?
This is ESPN.
Right.
So I will predict that everyone is going to complain about this. Everyone's going to say that it's way too much. This is ridiculous. And everyone's going to buy this pay-per-view on January 23rd.
Sure. Yeah. I think, man, I remember when the UFCs were like 30 something. I sound so old. Oh, back in my day, UFCs were only $30. But, when you have a star as big as Conor McGregor that everybody will be able to, would probably be willing to pay to see, even like, what do you think is the ceiling realistically, for a Conor McGregor pay-per-view to be able to go for?
Price-wise?
Yeah.
Well, we already know.
How much was the Floyd one?
Floyd and Conor was, oh God, I don't know. Because Floyd and Manny was 100, and everyone just gasped at that, and it did the all-time record. So that's where I've said, like, if you have the right fight, I don't know what the ceiling is. I want to say Conor and Floyd, again, it was based on whatever provider you had. I want to say that was about 75.
So, I mean, clearly, like, they're going to keep, inching this thing up. Like, fight sports and combat sports pay-per-views, maybe not wrestling, but, like, when it comes to boxing, it's not unusual to pay that much for one single fight. And I think they're looking at...
When they did this last year, I mean, that fight with Conor and Cerrone ended up doing 1.3 million buys was the latest total for... This is ESPN Plus. We're talking... The latest number, like this is 11.5 million subscribers on on ESPN Plus. So it's not even like the old pay-per-view universe. The question is, it's not so much the January 23rd card. It's this price point for all UFC pay-per-views. And the smaller ones, we're probably not going to hear those numbers. We'll hear when they do big numbers. But, the indications are, UFC had a number of big shows this past year, and that was with a $5 increase a year ago, and now it's another $5 increase. What is the breaking point for people? I don't think it's going to be felt in January, but when you move into a lesser show, when you've got, throw out a name, headlining, is 70 just going to be, okay, I'm not shelling this out every month. Everyone's going to have a different breaking point, and, they'll see if they hit it or not. But traditionally, you move the price up, it's not going to decrease your business.
Yeah, especially if it's a small increment, like 5. Just a bit of research here. It seemed like the Conor Floyd fight was $89.95.
Okay,
for standard definition, and then
standard. So it was HD was $100.
$99.95 for high HD. Yes.
Wow, I didn't remember it being $100. I remembered the Floyd and Manny one being $100. But well, there you go, and that was the second biggest pay-per-view in history. So the two highest pay-per-view buys in history, headlined by Floyd, were also the most expensive.
How far? What card are we going to need to get a 3-figure pay-per-view charge?
Well, let me ask you this: what is throwing out? Whatever. I'll throw in Floyd because he's the only boxer I think that could be able to charge that. What would be a fight that could get away charging $100 right now that would do very successful business?
I think boxing is a totally different beast. Like, if you're a boxing fan, you're probably a lot more used to paying like these crazy amount of prices for a single night than maybe an MMA fan. So I'm really the wrong person.
It wouldn't be. I don't think, Wade, like in boxing, and granted, I'm not following boxing day to day. Like, it would be Floyd, and I don't know if there's an opponent in boxing right now that you could do that. Like, it would have to be like one of these ridiculous fights.
Mike Tyson.
Well, that one probably is not. But like Floyd and Logan Paul, I mean, they're doing that weird pricing structure, which again, like they're offering it now to offer it at such a discounted amount when, I mean, this to me shows like you could charge an incredible amount for that fight. Maybe that one you don't go 100 with, but there's going to be enough people that would spend, I think, $70 on that fight come February when they do that fight.
Well, what's the biggest dream match that's out there right now that hasn't happened yet?
Okay, if they did, because they like this has been, very much teased publicly, is doing Manny Pacquiao and Conor McGregor. Could that have the same level of? I don't think that one's coming close to what Conor and Floyd did, but would that be one where you could get away with such a high price point? Especially with the precedent of what a Conor boxing fight cost in the past.
I mean, I think it would certainly be successful. It would not be as successful as the Floyd fights. Can you get away with it? Sure, you can. Yeah, why not? Like, it's a match that I think everybody will, for the most part, a lot of people will want to see.
That would be a very bad night for Conor McGregor. Very bad. I don't think that one would go the way of the
Floyd we thought fight. The Floyd match was going to be a really bad night for him.
I don't know if people were necessarily expecting him to get knocked out. And I think you had enough of the curiosity because of Conor. We had not seen him box before. I think most people realized what this fight was going to be. But the idea of, Manny Pacquiao is not going to be taking any rounds off. But anyway,
So
It will not shock me if that fight happens.
Well, another question coming off of all this is, you see the UFC, or at least ESPN, raising UFC prices. How does WWE or even AEW, how do they respond with? Do they respond? Can they respond with their pay-per-view pricing? And
well,
yeah,
it's a great point, because what the UFC and ESPN Plus is learning is that all those years and years of pay-per-view is this dying industry. I mean, they're finding that, especially this past year, if we have a fight people want, the ceiling is that much higher. And I mean, WWE getting out of the pay-per-view business, I think everyone can look back. Like, it was a decision that they put all of their eggs into the WWE network, and fair enough. Like, they believed, like, we are getting ahead of this curve, and the streaming platform, we are putting our biggest tool in it in WrestleMania, but you left a ton of revenue on the table of, like, WrestleMania once a year, I think would still be like a very prized property that people would be your one show of the year to buy. And UFC is showing that if you have that show that the public wants, the price is only going to go up.
I think even like prior to all of this, like even this past WrestleMania, I feel like there are very like loud rumblings that WWE could be, they could be monetizing WWE in other ways, and I certainly feel like they will we'll probably hear a little bit more about that heading into WrestleMania season this year. And I also think that they wouldn't lose anybody. If they took NXT off of the network and the numbers still really hold up, and in fact,
NXT hasn't dented that number at all. Like the network did better this year.
Yeah, I don't think the loss of WrestleMania will affect them at all. Like, if you're a network subscriber at this point, it's not just that once a year that you're tuning in for. It's probably the weekly monthly pay-per-views. It's the occasional takeover, and maybe just access to the archive at this point. I don't think that the loss of 1 month, it'll probably prevent them from like getting a number of extra people. But is that worth sacrificing your potential pay-per-view buys that you might get out of Mania?
Yeah, and I mean, this lesson here is that, like, UFC has been an enormous help for ESPN Plus. I think number one, it's ESPN Plus being bundled with Disney Plus, but the UFC has helped grow this thing significantly. With Conor McGregor now, like last year, that was a massive fight that they were able to put on ESPN Plus last year. And if you're a streaming service out there, and we know that the WWE is willing to shop these pay-per-views around, like, this is telling you that they are looking for content that is going to drive subscribers to their services, and WWE becomes very attractive if you're a competing service looking for available content out there that is not UFC.
So if the idea is to possibly shop it to a streaming service so that they can charge more, ask their audience to pay more for this premium content, well, why wouldn't WWE do that on their own? Leave it on the network, but say, if you want to watch WrestleMania, it's $50 extra, or however much extra.
I think what they want is, I think they have a belief that it's very hard to put the toothpaste back in the tube now on their own service to just charge people for that. And maybe they don't have a confidence that would work. The guarantee is that, an Amazon Prime pays stupid money to have the rights to their pay-per-views, or at least to WrestleMania, and then that's on Amazon Prime to sell this thing and get their subscribers on board. We've got a guaranteed amount no matter what WrestleMania does.
Sure, but does something like this, like with UFC's success, I guess you could say, like, would it give them any confidence? Would it give UFC themselves any confidence in the future when this deal runs out, to take this whole thing in-house and just charge for pay-per-views on Fight Pass?
I think this is a great deal that UFC has with ESPN, because they are, like, the reason they got out of the pay-per-view business is because they were able to eliminate, like, the risk that comes with, if we don't have a great pay-per-view this month, like, they get a guaranteed amount no matter what they put out there. And then, like, it's like if a fight falls apart, it's like we put out this pay-per-view, ESPN Plus is paying us a guaranteed amount. And we know from the get-go, it's like a sold show. If you're selling it to an outside promoter, it's like, you know how much money's coming in, and then it's on them to market and sell it. And it's a lot less of the turbulence that comes with the month to month of promoting a pay-per-view. And if something bombs, if that affects, you had earmarked that we were budgeting for 250,000 buys. It came in at 185. We had this big shortfall. Well, it's great if we can guarantee that 12 months of the year we're getting paid this amount per month based on these buys.
Right. Yeah.
It's interesting to watch, but I think like this is going to prove that I don't think UFC is going to suffer at all for their big shows with this price increase, and it's more revenue that's going to be coming in for ESPN Plus as a result of this. So there you go. That is all of our news to get through, and we'll wind down the show. I guess this is our final time we will speak to you in 2020. We will be releasing the free version of our Best of 2020 show on Thursday. So if you are not a member of the Post Wrestling Cafe, you can listen to that on Thursday. That will be available on our main feed, and you can find that through the site. And then Friday,
YouTube as well. If you
YouTube.com/Post Wrestling. Subscribe. You'll never miss a show. You never know what's going to pop up there. But how are we going to kick off 2021 on Friday?
Well, next week, of course. Man, it does not feel like it, but we are entering Wrestle Kingdom week. We are really just 4.5 days away from Wrestle Kingdom. So to get you all caught up on storylines and previewing all the matches will be myself, John Pollock, and WH Park for our Wrestle Kingdom 15 primer, going through every single match over both nights, Monday and Tuesday, for all of you on this side of the world. So that'll be released on Friday morning, New Year's Day.
New Year's Day, a big primer for both Wrestle Kingdom shows. And then Wai and I will sneak in a episode of Rewind-a-SmackDown on Saturday that will be available for all members of the Post Wrestling Cafe. If you are considering jumping on to join the cafe, wait until Friday. The first of the month is when you'll get billed, and then you get the entire month, which will include both Wrestle Kingdom shows on Monday and Tuesday that we'll be doing right after the show's conclusion. It will include live access to not just Rewind-a-SmackDown every Friday night, but also the live Worst Of show coming up on January the 12th. Bonus shows every Tuesday. So if you're going to join the cafe, we have a lot of cool stuff coming up in the month of January.
And if you decide to upgrade to either double, ice cap, or espresso tiers, we will be beginning our live Rewind-a-Raw and Rewind-a-Dynamite reviews starting next week. So, on Monday, after...
I don't know how we're doing Monday and Tuesday.
After John and I would have just watched Wrestle Kingdom, done our review, stayed up, maybe take a nap, and then we would cover Raw. You can see us in a pretty sleep-deprived state, potentially, as we head into the next... couple hours worth of Wrestle Kingdom night 2. So, it should be interesting, and you can join us live if you're a double ice cap or espresso patron.
Do you have a plan for how you're doing this? Like, what is your sleeping schedule like Sunday night going into Monday?
Oh God, my sleep schedule has just been awful lately. Like it's been difficult for me to get more than like 4 or 5 hours straight anyway. So I imagine frequent naps throughout the day whenever I can fit them in. What about you?
It's now that we're close to it, it's very daunting. My plan is I'm going to sleep very early on Sunday and then wake up. This show is what, at 3 a.m?
Yeah, I believe 3 a.m. and 2 a.m. for East Coast.
Okay.
For like between the two nights.
Oh, okay, gotcha. So that is the plan. To watch it live, do the show with you, then probably sleep at some point during the day on Monday, I hope, before Raw. And then I'm just going to do Raw, the show after with you, and go right through Wrestle Kingdom and do another show with you. That will be the crazy stretch.
So the thing we did kind of like talk about on the primer was that these are potentially shorter Wrestle Kingdoms. They're 6-5 matches, something like that. And
we'll see, man. That first night when I was looking at that, and we've got Okada, Ospreay, followed by Naito and Ibushi. Like, those are going to be I would be stunned if either is under 25.
Unless there are restrictions that we don't know about, where they do have to keep them
and
short.
then it's going to be the undercard that's going to get the short end of that stick.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see. Yeah, the show length will be notable.
I think it would be wise to delay it a little if you're concerned, John, because there's bound to be an intermission. Maybe even.
Will there be an intermission?
There has to be. They
do have to clean the ring, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they have to sanitize the ring. So, we will see. It'll be quite the 48-hour period of covering these shows. I am not watching New Year's Dash live. That one will be watched later in the day.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right, that's it, everyone. Thank you for all of the support, downloads, comments, feedback, insults, whatever you sent our way in 2020. It's been I feel redundant. Everyone has noted, yeah, it's been a crazy year. We know. Thank you for sticking around, making us a small part of your day throughout the year. And that is it. Good night, everyone, and we will speak with you in the new year.